everybody. Let's get started on the third lesson in lesson 1, which is lesson 1C. Let's start by opening Photoshop. Remember, we're in the home screen here. If you are working on a document from a video previously and you're in the middle of a lesson, it's probably going to show up here just as the review in your most recent works. Remember, you are going to be saving everything into the cloud, so they should be in your Photoshop lessons, but when we're starting new, mine, you have to go to the network server. So let's go ahead and go to File. And then let's go to File, Open up at the top. We're going to click on your computer. And then we need to scroll to Courses, Art, Computer Graphic Lessons, Photoshop Lessons, Lesson 1. And we are going to be opening up the 1C End and 1C Start. Okay, so what we're doing in this unit, in this lesson, is we're continuing to talk about the troubleshooting steps in Photoshop. So remember, when you're working on something and something isn't working right, there's 3 basic things I want you to do before you call me over. First one, if you remember from yesterday's lesson, is check your layers panel. The second thing is going to be checking to make sure you don't have an unwanted selection. And the third is going to be the options for the tool that you're using. And we're going to quickly review those. So before we get started, let's reset our essentials. So we're going to put everything back the way it used to be by going up to the top right hand side and going to Reset Essentials. It should put all your palettes and panels back the right way, just in case it's funky from the last time. All right, so as a reminder with your layers, let's pull this out here. Your layers panel is going to show all those different stacked layers that make up your image. Okay, so if each layer is on top of each other, they're kind of coming at you like that. So you can see in our end file here, there are 3 layers. We've got a Ty Design layer, the Ty Orange layer, and the background layer. And you can kind of sort of see what's on each of these layers by turning them on. Okay? Let's go ahead and we're going to close the end file because we don't need to keep that open. We're going to save this start file because we're going to get started today. So we're going to go to File, Save As. Remember, you are not saving on your computer, you're saving on the cloud. You're going to save it in your Photoshop lessons, and let's call this Lesson 1C and click Save. Remember, no special characters, punctuation of any kind. We don't want to corrupt that file. Okay. So as I said, we've got 3 layers in here, and it's going to be really important in this lesson to make sure you're on the right layer, because if you're not, you're going to have issues painting the tie, because that's what we're doing in this lesson is we're just going to design this tie. You're going to have some fun here, okay? But if you're not on the right layer, it's not going to work. So in the Layers panel, you will see that with these 3 layers, there's a slight oddity with your top Ty Design layer. If you look closely, you'll see that little arrow that's pointing down. What that's telling me is that's a special type of layer known as a masking layer. So it's kind of like a stencil that's applied on top. Don't have to worry about knowing too much about that right now, other than when you work today, you do need to make sure you are on the Ty Design layer. I know I'm on the Ty Design layer because that one is highlighted. That's my active layer. So when you add your paint and your design to the tie, you need to make sure you're on that, because if not, if you're on the Ty Orange or the background layer, it's actually going to possibly put paint in areas that you don't want it to. Okay, so let's say we're trying to paint on the tie and it's not working. Double check that we're on the Ty Design layer. That's still not working. Then the next step is to check to make sure you don't have an unwanted selection. And the easiest way to do that is to go up to your select and see if that deselect up the top you see there is in bold. If it's in bold, it means you actually have an area selected. You just might not have realized it. So if that's the case, you hit deselect and it probably should work again. Because sometimes we accidentally click on something and you might have a really teeny tiny selection that you can't see those marching ants to. So that's why that happens. All right. Let's say you don't have a selection, it's still not working. Your next option then is to check your options for your tool up here. So remember, every time you change your tool, it's going to change the options up here. But a lot of your tools are going to have this option, which is called a mode option, especially these ones in the center here. Your center tools, those are your painting and editing tools. The first troubleshooting step I would do when you're in your options is double check and make sure that mode is set to normal. That's really important because there's lots of different options. Don't worry about it so much right now. Just know that normal is the one that you're going to want most of the time. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to grab our paintbrush tool. So the paintbrush tool shortcut is B in case you're wondering. And we're going to start by resetting the tool. So just like you can reset your your workspace by going to the Essentials and Reset Essentials, you can reset a tool as well. So let's say we had the brush tool, it's still not working, we set it to normal, something still isn't working. The next step is to reset that specific tool. So if you click over to the left, and this option is always going to be on the left-hand side there, click on the Settings button and go to Reset Tool Presets and click OK. And it should just reset all of your options up at the top, okay? So go ahead and stop the video and try that now. All right, next thing is we're going to just learn just a little bit about the brush tool today. You can have some fun and play around with it more if you want to, but we're just going to scratch the surface. We'll have a lesson all about this and a whole lesson about layers later. We're going to start by changing our brush shape. So if you click on the brushes option over here to the left-hand side, you're going to see that you should have these group packs of brushes. You have a general brushes, you have a dry media, you have wet media, and special effects. If you're ever having issues, always just go back to the general brushes and just click one of the basic brushes. It's just going to make your life easier. However, if you want to be more experimental today, you can click on the special effects. Just be careful because some of the special effects, especially these concept brushes at the bottom, you may have some issues depending on how the program's been installed on your computer. Okay, I'm going to grab one of those. In here, you can change your size to the brush, and if you let it hover, you can kind of see how big or small that brush would be. Okay. So go ahead, stop the video. I want you to select a brush and select a brush size. All right, so now that you have a brush and a brush size selected, let's look at a few of the other options up here. We're going to leave our opacity set as 100%. Opacity just means how see-through something is. 100% means it's 100% opaque, you can't see. So if you paint, it will completely cover something else up, okay? I don't want you to worry about flow or smoothing. We're going to leave all of those as is. All right, the next step before we start painting is to change our foreground color, to change our color that we're going to paint with. So whatever happens to be your color here that's on the foreground, okay, so that's the chip that's on top, that's your foreground color. By default, if I reset it, the defaults, which is this little button here, the default is black and white. So the default is black paint on a white background. So if you paint or draw, it's going to paint with black. If you erase, it's going to erase back down to white. Okay, but you can change both of those. And the easiest way to change your color is to double click on that foreground color swatch. When you do, you double click, it's going to open up your color picker. And you can slide through, you can pick different colors. So go ahead and stop the video and try that now. Okay, excellent. So now we've got a color for our brush, we're ready to go. Before we go, let's double check, make sure we're on our tie design layer, and then we're going to come into our image, and I just want you to paint. You can either click and drag, or you can draw lines, however you want to do that. All right, so stop the video and try that now. Okay, we're going to change colors. You can either change your brush shape if you want to. Let me just do that. Might as well do that so you can see how that works. Let me go into some wet media brushes. Sure, why not? And we're going to change our color, but instead of using the color picker this time, we're going to use a new panel because we're getting used to panels. There should be, by default, when we reset the essentials, you should have a swatches panel that's over to the right hand side. If you don't, you can go up to Window and open Swatches. When you go into your swatches, just like the brushes, you'll see that you have libraries of color that you can pick on. And we'll go into this panel later. But go ahead and pick a different color, right, using your swatches panel. And then we're going to come into our image, double check to make sure you're on your design layer, and add dots, add designs, however you want to do that. Excellent. Okay, now I'm going to show you why layers are really cool. So we don't have any areas selected, but we do happen to have this layer is our active layer. We have a stencil, so we don't need to make a selection. We're going to change the color of the paint that we just sprayed on there or painted on there. So double check, make sure you're on your tie design layer, and we're going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and we're going to go to Color Balance. This dialog box should pop up, and notice I can change my colors of the splatters that are on my tie. If this one doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot, which is the color balance, your other option is to go to Image Adjustment and go to Hue and Saturation. And you'll probably see more quick changes, more apparent changes. Okay, so stop the video, try that now. All right, again, that's why it's really nice to have things on separate layers. We can do the same thing with the Thai orange. So let's click on the Thai orange layer. We're going to go to image adjustments and let's go to invert. Notice it changes, it flips it to its opposite. So it was a lighter orange, so it's going to make it a really dark blue. If you don't like that, instead of inverting, you can try your brightness and contrast. You can try one of the other ones so that you're changing that background color of the Thai. Again, it's up to you if you want to change that, but you need to make sure you're on that Thai orange layer. All right, the last thing we're going to do here is, again, I'm showing you why it's important to separate things out on layers, is you have more control. I don't even have to make a selection because it's the only thing that's on that layer right now. We're going to apply a filter to that. So click on your Thai design layer. We're going to go up to filter, and we're going to go to blur, and I want you to go to Gaussian blur. What it's going to do is it's going to blur your paint strokes a little bit. You can blur them a lot or a little. It's up to you, but I want you to put a slight blur on your Thai design pattern that you just put on there. Okay, let me double check to make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to today. All right, so that's it. So let's do a quick review. What are your 3 troubleshooting steps? Right, number 1, check your layers. Make sure you're on the right layer. Number 2, check to make sure you don't have a selected area. And step number 3, check the options. Make sure your tool is set to normal and that your opacity, all those other things are set to the basics, okay? If you have an issue, I will ask you that first thing. When I come over to your station, I'll ask you, did you try the troubleshooting steps? If you say no, I say, okay, try those first and then I'll be back. Because 90% of the time, that's going to fix the problems that you're having. All right? With the rest of the time, I want you to play around with this image. You can do whatever you want to this image. The only thing I'm requiring of you is when you turn it in, that I see that there's a design on the Thai and that the design, the pattern, the drawing, whatever you put, it's within the margins of the Thai. And I'll know that means you are on the right layer, which is that Thai design layer. Great job, everybody. I'll see you back here tomorrow.